The night before the Indianapolis 500, quiet for many, but for a few, a night before history. At the end of the day, one driver will have their number highlighted all night long onto the pagoda as the winner of the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500. This year's Indianapolis 500 is very different. The sun is not rising on the last Sunday of May, but the second to last Sunday of August. The sun is not rising to greet 300,000 fans, but instead an empty speedway with only 33 competitors today. Many of the pre-race traditions and festivities will not occur today. Instead, the silence of an empty racetrack. 33 competitors. You only have 32 drivers between you and victory today. No other distractions. The teams have been working tirelessly all month long. Now it's time for you, the driver, to beat 32 others and win. But the other 32 drivers are not just a group of 32 drivers, 30 drivers of the best drivers you have to beat. This is the Indianapolis 500. Drivers like Alexander Rossi, looking to be a second time Indianapolis 500. Simon Pagenaud, Indianapolis 500, for a second year in a row. Marco Andretti, trying to end that ready curve. Distinguished guests, welcome to the 104th of the Indianapolis 500. Hello everyone, welcome to Grid Live special pre-race edition for the Indianapolis 500. Joe Samaniego here, along with Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish and Matt White from the Grid World Motorsports League. It's going to be a fun day. We got a lot to cover. Let's get started. We got a lot. Kobe, I'll start with you. How excited are you for today?
Oh, Joe, I'm extremely excited. Actually, I couldn't really sleep last night. I didn't fall asleep until about 4:30 a.m. Eastern time. It was just like, wow, felt like Christmas morning as a kid. I understand, that everything's different this year with the Indianapolis 500 not been in the month of May. It still sounds weird saying the month of August, and hopefully we don't have to do this again and can return to the month of May. But I'm just so grateful that we're even going to have an Indy 500 this year, because I remember when everything was shutting down in March, it looked like we weren't even going to have an Indy 500 this year. So, just to have it, happening today, it just seems so surreal. I understand it's going to be very different, such an unprecedented year because of the pandemic, and it's going to be run behind closed doors without fans. Yeah, and I understand. I've seen some people say that they're not looking forward to it this year because it's not in the month of May. It's not traditional. And yeah, everybody's entitled to feel, any way they choose. But for me, I'm just grateful that we're even going to have this wonderful race this year. It's the greatest spectacle in racing. I don't care if it's in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, or all the other months. I'm just glad that we're going to have an Indy 500. And although it's different, it's still the Indy 500 at the end of the day.
Different, but it's going to be the same Indy 500. Matt, I know it's been a while since we had you on the air. How's everything been for you, and how excited are you for today's Indy 500 race?
And it's going to be a terrific race, I should think. Coming up, we've had to wait 3 months extra than we would have had to wait for this race, but the overall races we've had in the IndyCar series so far in 2020 have been excellent. So I should see no change for that this afternoon.
I hear you. It's going to be really great to see. It's going to be a little bit of later start time compared to normal, but it's still going to be the same Indy 500 race that we always anticipated. Unprecedented, of course, with the global pandemic. We're running it today, second to last Sunday of August, but it's still the same 500 miles, 200 laps, 33 drivers starting in 11 rows of 3 in a row. We're going to have one winner. The different time of day and the year, of course, it's going to be August. It's going to be hotter because we're starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, a little different than traditional start time. Starting with you, Kobe, how is that going to affect the race, especially for the handling of the cars?
Well, it seems like, when it's warmer, passing is a little bit more difficult than when it's cooler. Passing is a little bit easier. I understand, I'm sure we're going to talk about this later in the show, but with the addition of the air screen adding more weight, some of the drivers are fearing that it's going to be a lot tougher to pass this year, while some other drivers, don't think it's going to be an issue. I think J.R. Hildebrand said he didn't think passing was going to be a major issue, and if you watch Carb Day, passing, it still can, be a challenge with this current aero kit, but it's possible. Yeah, you can. It's still possible to pass, and I think that we're definitely going to see a similar show as we saw last year because those final, that final green flag run between Simon Pagenaud and Alexander Rossi, and then you had Takuma Sato trying to get in the mix as well. Yeah, I think we could see a lot of excellent racing like that today.
Yeah, I agree. We've had some terrific finishes in the recent history. You think back to Dario and Takuma Sato on the last lap a few years ago. Of course, the famous Dan Weldon Hildebrand won in 2008, and the last couple have been excellent as well. The weather is going to be an issue. Well, not an issue, but a different issue for the teams to deal with. You think to NASCAR, who would normally have their end of regular season race at Indianapolis until the last couple of years. They've had some hot ones at this time of year. I remember an Xfinity race a few years ago where there were people absolutely boiling in the cars. Okay, NASCAR to IndyCar, very different type of car, but the weather is going to be warm. It's different time of day, as you said, Joe, as well, than we would normally have the start time. So lots of different things to think about when it comes to this race as opposed to any other Indy 500.
Yeah, it's going to be really different. It's going to be interesting to see how the Indy 500 plays out. For all the drivers, it's going to be a really hot one, and especially for some of the rookies that are going to be racing today.
Yeah, and speaking of rookies, we have 5 rookies running this year's Indy 500, starting with Dalton Kellett, who's going to be driving with AJ Foyt Racing. Then have 2 drivers from Arrow McLaren SP and Oliver Askew and Pato O'Ward. Then Delcoin Racing, Alex Palou, and then the fastest rookie so far during the month of August with Ed Carpenter Racing. We have the spectacular, always exciting Rinus VeeKay. And the last rookie to win the Indy 500 was Alexander Rossi in 2016. And out of the 5 rookies who are making their Indy 500 debut, who do you think is most likely to win out of that group?
That group most likely to win, I think, probably has to be Rinus VeeKay or Alex Palou. Rinus VeeKay, he has the speed. He got the experience from Ed Carpenter Racing. Ed Carpenter, of course, a master in Indianapolis. But Alex Palou looks really good, too. He got a really good finish earlier this year at Road America. So it's going to be, I think, between those two.
Well, if you're going to take those 2, I'll take the 2 Arrow SP McLaren guys of Pato O'Ward and Oliver Askew, who both have shown in their very small IndyCar series career that they're very capable on ovals. Askew was in the top 10 on his first run at Texas back in May. So they're going to be ones to watch, I think. But obviously, Dalton Kellett, who we've not kind of been on the radar as such until we got to Indianapolis, he could be a fly in the ointment in the rookie race.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at that group, I think so far I'd have to say that Rinus VeeKay might be the best possible option if I had to pick a rookie winner today. Because VeeKay with Ed Carpenter Racing, they always bring real fast cars. They typically show up in qualifying, but this year since Chevrolet had a power deficit, to Honda, yeah, Rinus VeeKay, yes, he was the fastest Chevy driver, but Ed Carpenter Racing in general, they just didn't have the qualifying speed this year. And it's gonna be interesting to see if Ed Carpenter, and Chevrolet, if they can run well during the race day. I also think the Arrow McLaren SP drivers could be very competitive as well. And Alex Palou, I certainly think that he could surprise some people. It seems like he's definitely getting along well so far in IndyCar. And and this is the only 500-mile race of the year, which is also the hardest one as well. How do you keep your rookie driver focused on the race? Since everything is going to be so new for them.
Well, minimise mistakes, especially in the pit lane. That's going to be a key point of this race. You need to keep them cool with lots of drink in those pit stops if it's going to be a hot one today, and just keep them calm. And as you said, it is the only 500-mile race of the season in a hot encased vehicle. These guys haven't done this before, so it's a new experience for them all. And just keep them calm, and if they can keep them in the game and not lose laps or have any technical problems, then you'd expect a couple of them to be, as you mentioned before, Kobe, after that that last green flag run to the finish. If we've got some rookies in there, then stand back.
Yeah, certainly. The inexperience could definitely play a factor later in the race because they're not used to those conditions, like knowing when to go at the restart. If a rookie's leading, like say with 10 laps to go in a restart, the driver who has competed in like 7 or 8 Indy 500s who's lined up in second might be able to take advantage of them right there, and capitalize on their inexperience. And that's something that we should definitely watch out for as we get closer to the end of the race. And Joe, you participated in Indy 500 Media Day, and you saw, what Rena's VK said. So like heading into the race, what was Rena's VK's attitude on Media Day?
So it was definitely really interesting. Rena's VK coach being a rookie hasn't had the greatest year, but definitely he showed the confidence that he anticipates somebody that has been at Indianapolis before. I asked him the question, being a rookie at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, there are situations such as the late restart. If you're up front during the late restart, it's going to get really crazy. Are you nervous about that? How do you prepare about that? And he told me his team, Ed Carpenter Racing, the crew around him, they really rally around Rinus VK. They've really shared all the information, and they got a lot of confidence and faith in him. And he's really showing that confidence and faith in himself. And I think he's going to be a contender for this year's Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, with Rena's VK, he started off the season, really rough. He crashed twice at Texas, once in practice and once in the race where he took out his fellow rookie Alex Palou, and people were thinking like, wow, this is not a good way to start off your IndyCar career. Since then, Rena's VK's put that horrible IndyCar debut behind him, and he's been pushing forward ever since. He seems very confident in his car and team heading into today's Indy 500.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone like Palou and Renus had never seen an oval before until they got to Texas, so it's a very different experience for them. Let's take a look at the cars, which we are going to see this afternoon in this Indy 500. Not too many changes from last year. Still Honda and Chevrolet powered, of course, throughout the field, but they've had the big aero screen dumped on the top. You can see a picture of it there on Fernando Alonso's car. We'll get to him later on in the show. This has already proven to be, possibly a life-saving device already, because we saw the accident at Iowa with Colton Herta and Rinus VK on that botched restart when Colton went up and over the top of Renus's car and scraped across the top of it. So thankfully, it's already had its first test and it came out of it unscathed, but it has changed the handling of these cars and, of course, the airflow around them. The heat in the cabin will be higher than normal, and of course, being in August as well, that is a second factor to factor in. Does this favour rookies or someone of experience, guys, with the new aero screen on top of the cars?
Definitely, I think with this aero screen, it's going to be really challenging for everybody. One of the things we heard is for some of the experienced drivers, they will almost have a sense of how the air was working around them. Well, now that's gone with the aero screen. If you're a rookie, you don't have that sense missing. So it could be a little bit of an equalizer, but I still think when it comes to the rookies, anytime you're brand new in the super speedway, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's certainly gonna be a challenge for everyone. Yeah, the cockpit's a lot hotter, but IndyCar has introduced some new they've like messed around with the cooling system since then, and tried out a bunch of different things. And it seems like that they're able to get more air circulating in the cockpit for the drivers, and that's certainly gonna be a big help. And I'm sure as they get more race under their belt, they can keep adjusting, until they find the perfect fit for the drivers in order to keep them cool enough so that like you mentioned, Matt, that Xfinity racing on August. I remember I believe Kyle Busch won that race, and he had to like sit, and he had to like sit down beside his car, and he was absolutely exhausted, and I believe he had to go to the info care center and get some fluids. But certainly I think that with the heat today in Indiana, it could certainly be a hot one in the cockpit.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is going to be if it is hot and we get a lot of caution. Of course, we've got heat soak, which could be a problem. The cars go through the air and that cools them down. But if we get a lot of caution and they're sat running around at a lower speed, that might be a problem especially for these rookies. Of course, I've never been in this position before in this heat on an oval with the aero screen. Of course, it's new for everybody, but as we've already touched on, some different bits and pieces to worry about during this race.
Absolutely. And now taking a look at the drivers who are competing in the Indianapolis 500 for the second time, starting with Marcus Ericsson, who finished 23rd last year. Felix Rosenquist was 28th. Santino Ferrucci, 7th. Ben Hanley, 32nd. Colton Herta, dead last. He had an issue in the first 5 laps of the race, and then in 2017, Fernando Alonso finished 24th after such a great race until his Honda engine decided to go kaboom. So out of these drivers, we only there's only 3 IndyCar wins, 2 from Colton Herta and 1 from Felix Rosenquist a little while ago at Road America. If one of these drivers wins, would you consider this an upset?
I would definitely see
Well,
it.
go on.
I would definitely see it as an upset where with these drivers essentially we see where we only have 3 wins, and definitely to get the 4th win out of this group at the biggest race of the year, it would be an upset in my opinion.
Well, depends who you talk about, because if you think back to the Texas race, which opened the season, Felix Rosenquist was second and was coming out Scott Dixon at the end until he made an error in judgment in traffic, which put him in the fence. So he'll be fast. We know how good Alonso was here 2 years ago and had a half shot at winning the race before, as you said, his engine went kaboom. So there's a couple of guys in that list that you mentioned, and Colton Herta will be fast. He had no luck here last year and retired very early in the race. So there's a couple of guys in that list, especially, that I wouldn't score it an upset victory, but probably not on my top, 5 certainties that could win this race for sure.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that group, the only one I consider it a major upset if Ben Hanley came out and won the Indy 500 today, because him and Dragon Speed, they've been way behind since the beginning. Start off with those electrical gremlins in the beginning, then they were way off the pace. And I gotta give credit to Dragon Speed. They kept with the program, stuck with it, worked hard, and I believe they were about maybe 1.3 seconds off the pace. And considering how far off they were before, that's a huge gain, and let's see if they can gain some more in the race. So out of that group, definitely, I think Ben Hanley, if he won today, considering all the Dragon Speed struggles and being a little bit off the pace, that would definitely be a huge upset in my book. And looking at one of those drivers we mentioned, Fernando Alonso, going for the Triple Crown, and it's unlikely that he won't be back for the next 2 years, because he's going to be going back to Formula One for his third stint with Renault. So with Alonso, if with this future, coming back to the Indy 500 being so uncertain, do you think this is a must-win situation for him and brings additional pressure?
Well, I mean, as we've mentioned already, he had a half a shot 2 years ago to win this race, and it all went wrong in the last third with the engine failure. Last year, of course, was a complete disaster, and he didn't even make the field. So he'll be pleased to have got in the race this time and not have to have that additional pressure of last week trying to get in. Of course, with the pandemic, we didn't really have much of a bump day, but he's in if he's got a good car under him and he's in that front group at the end. And we mentioned it already, the last green flag run. Expect fireworks from the Spaniard, because, as you said, he's not going to be back for the next couple of years. Can he be the first man to win this Triple Crown? It's going to be a sight if he's up there, but he'll have a lot of experienced heads from this speedway around him to race for the victory, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see if Fernando Alonso can win the Triple Crown and enjoying Graham Hill there. And Joe, when you were participating in Media Day, what were some of the comments made by Colton Herta and Felix Rosenquist about the race today?
So it was really interesting talking to both of them in Media Day. Of course, both of them second Indianapolis 500. For Colton Herta, it felt like it was still his first one, because he got to do so little time at the Indianapolis 500 last year. One of the questions I asked him was, since he missed the Fast 9, do you feel that was a little bit of a disadvantage because he couldn't go for the pole, or an advantage where he could go with the mechanics, the team, and work on the car, prepare it? They did work on the car, prepare it, but like any true racer, he wished he was in that Fast 9 contending for the pole. With Felix Rosenquist, a little bit different. He said without all the pageantry, without the fans there, he felt he has been more able to focus on the race ahead. Of course, the Indianapolis 500 is very unique, where we definitely have all the events that are going on, all the special events. One of the things Tony Kanaan mentioned, Media Day, is normally by Media Day, the drivers are wanting to hide. They just need a break from everything. This year, Media Day was the first busy day they really had. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all the drivers in their second attempt at the Indianapolis 500 handle it. Now, one of the big things, of course, is strategy when it comes to pit stops. Pit stop is going to be really critical for everybody. Here is the pit layout. As you can see, closest to the pit exit, you have Andretti, Dixon, VK, essentially all the Fast 9 members except Brian Hunter-Reay. He selected the pit stop before Gasoline Alley. And then as you see, there are a couple of gaps. Indianapolis Motor Speedway has more pit stops than the 33 starters, so there's a couple of gaps. The big gap you got to realize is especially Spencer Pickett. He is the first pit stall after the start-finish line. Now, when it comes to pit stops, a lot of times we see fuel is the main reason we're doing pit stops. We're not like NASCAR where tire management is a big thing. So a lot of times we're seeing stints between 30 to 35 laps if you're really pushing it, trying to save fuel. With that said, several times we've seen yellow flag pit stops. It's plenty long, this pit road, but it's not the widest, it's one of the narrowest one. How important is it, especially keeping the car safe when it comes to yellow flag pit stops, preventing a pit road accident?
Well, we've seen it here before in the past, haven't we? A couple of times where people have got stacked up in pit lane. It's quite narrow. It is long, but it is quite a narrow pit lane here. If you think of some of the NASCAR tracks that we've seen so far this year and continue to see, they're quite wide pit lanes, but the Indy 500 pit lane is quite narrow. Spotters will be key in the pit stops, as well the guys on top of the pit box giving you a clean in and a clean out, because we've seen that happen here in the past when it can have some consequences. And we saw here in the NASCAR race a few weeks or months ago, didn't we, with the big accident with Ryan Blaney, and we had a pit man get injured. So we don't want to see any of that nonsense today. Hopefully we'll be clean and green in the pit lane. But yeah, a narrow pit lane, lots of cars, especially early in the race. If we get a yellow and everyone piles in, because they'll all still be on the lead lap, and that will possibly cause an issue. And as you mentioned, guys that are next to gaps, either in front or behind their stall, may get an advantage out of that.
You brought up a good point there, Matt, about the Brickyard 400 a little while ago. With NASCAR being at the Brickyard, the accident on pit lane where it ended up hurting one member of Team Penske's pit crew. It's just so narrow, and we've seen it happen before in the Indy 500 as well, where the pit lane is so narrow. Drivers trying to get in and out of their pits, and then somebody ends up getting hurt. I think a member of Dale Coyne Racing. I'm not sure which year it was, but I definitely know it was definitely within the last 3 or 4 years or so. I remember one member of Dale Coyne Racing got hit by one of the cars, and it looked like a real nasty accident. And that everybody on pit road, it's really narrow. They just have to be aware, of everything going on and try to do their best to manage. But kudos to all of the to the over the wall crew, because it's a dangerous job going over the wall.
Very dangerous job, and you all bringing up the point about what happened at the Brickyard 400 with Ryan Blaney's team. Question for both of you guys, and I think starting with Kobe. When it comes to pit road selection spot, I know you all mentioned about the gap. When it comes to the driver selecting their pit stop, what are some of the things they're looking for and the strategy behind the pit stop they select?
Well, for me, if I'm picking which pit stall I want, I either want the first one, the last one, or one with there's a gap, because you definitely don't because you definitely want to get off pit road as smoothly as you want, and not be crammed up, as you can see right there on the screen. Like I wouldn't want to be somebody like Ed Carpenter, because I have Zach Beach behind me and Felix Rosenquist in front of me, and then there's not a gap. You could be tight, especially during yellows, pitting under yellow definitely could get really congested. I understand, with some people, especially NASCAR with the Brickyard 400, some of the drivers actually wait and pit a second time around in order to avoid congestion on pit road, because in stock cars, you might get a little fender damage, during a breakup, but IndyCar, definitely not forgiven, because you could get wing damage, and wing damage, could definitely hinder or end your day.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is if it's under green, then that could ruin your day, especially. And thinking back to what we were talking about before about incidents on pit lane, I do seem to remember Dario Franchitti in his last IndyCar Indy 500 win was facing backwards on pit lane at one point during that race and still came back to win the race. So it can be done if you have an incident on pit road, but you've got to be very lucky to do so.
Yeah, you'd be very lucky, and that was a really good point about Dario Franchitti. One of the big things I was really surprised was how in the Fast 9, 8 of them went for that first group. Assuming if they're all running up front, that wouldn't be too much of an issue. But if we come to a yellow flag and you have somebody from the top 9 spots pitting later because they fell back, and you've got a car coming out as one's coming in, that could be an issue. So it's going to be really surprising to me to see that, and definitely going to be really interesting to see how it turns out in the race. Of course, Spencer Pickett, the first pit stall after the start-finish line. So if somebody has to come into pit road and cross the start-finish line, that starts the next lap.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes on what happens with pit lane throughout the race. Let's have a look at our non-full-time drivers, and we've got a good bunch of those. You can see them up on the screen now. Ed Carpenter, of course, the favoured son from Indianapolis, and everyone will be expecting him to have a good race. Eyes to look for out of that group, I would say. We know J.R. Hildebrand, his history at this speedway, and Sage Karam as well has had some incidents around here. I will be looking at that number 29, James Hinchcliffe. He has had a checkered history at this track, a pole and a big accident as well. Could winning the Indy 500 today help solidify a return to the full-time IndyCar racing seat in 21, Kobe?
Yeah, I certainly think that, James Hinchcliffe is heading in the right direction right now in order to return to full-time racing, and he certainly has a sponsor right now that seems to believe in him. Yesterday when I was looking through Twitter, someone who works with, for the James Hinchcliffe sponsor, he praised James Hinchcliffe, and they were talking about how they've been doing a lot for James Hinchcliffe, sponsoring him and supporting them. And it said it's actually been a two-way street, and James Hinchcliffe has been a great ambassador for their brand. And so they're building that strong relationship, and doing everything they need to do, to work, sponsorship in motorsports. And James Hinchcliffe, in this partial schedule with Andretti Autosport, he's in a really good car. And all the Andretti cars look really good, and they should certainly be in contention today. So when you're looking, at the partial deal right now, it could definitely turn into full time later on. But winning the Indy 500 today, I think if that happens for James Hinchcliffe, I believe he's going to return to IndyCar full time next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he starts in the first couple of rows, so it'd be good to see James have a good run. Anyone on that list, Joe, that you think has got a disadvantage? We've mentioned Spencer Pickett already with his good pit selection, but anybody out of that group that we may not see much of?
And that's a really good question. I know when it comes to that group, Spencer Pickett, one of the big things that he talked about in media day, because we asked him the question, being not full-time, what are some of the disadvantages? That aero screen. He may not be used to running in such hot conditions during yellow flag pit stop. So that could be another distraction for him and some of the other drivers that don't have that much time with the aero screen. It does change the handling of the car just a little bit, but nothing too drastically where he felt like it was going to be a big disadvantage. But the big thing was the hotter temperatures, especially during the caution period.
Yeah, now looking at the drivers who are looking for their first Indy 500 win, Joseph Newgarden is the only current Team Penske driver without an Indy 500 win. His other teammates already have that, Helio Castroneves, Will Power, and Simon Pagenaud. I almost drew a blank there. And then we have Graham Rahal as well. Graham Rahal is starting 8th today, and usually Graham Rahal starts mid-pack or in the back and has to drive his way through the field. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Graham Rahal's going to perform today, since he's starting a lot better than he normally does. And then we have Charlie Kimball, Zach Beach, Connor Daly, another solid ride this year for him, and Jack Harvey with Meyer Shank Racing. So out of everyone in this group, who is most likely to win today?
I think most likely to win today out of that group has to be Graham Rahal. A little bit of a surprise. I know he's usually a little further back, got in the top 9, and he's been fairly quiet. Not making a whole lot of noise in the speed charts, but if he stays good, have a good, clean race, I see him being up towards the front. And I think he could be not exactly an upset winner, but a little bit of a surprise win. And I think it'll be a popular win.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham will be pushing hard for that. Newgarden interests me. Of course, we know the big Penske news that has come out this year with them buying the Speedway and whatnot else. What a story it would be for Penske to win the race in Roger's first year of owning the track, and wouldn't it be great for Joseph, who's of course a former series champion, to take the victory? I'd be looking at those guys at the bottom of that list, Connor Daly and Jack Harvey have both been very impressive. Granted, on the road courses so far in 2020, but they both had some good runs at the speedway as well and have come unstuck in recent years. So look for Connor and look for Jack to possibly be in the fight if they can keep their noses clean throughout the day.
Yeah, not everyone on that list. I gotta agree with Joe. I think Graham Rahal might actually have, his best shot to win the Indy 500 yet. I mean, it seems like Andretti, then Scott Dixon, Chip Ganassi Racing, then Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. Seems like they definitely have a lot of speed in their cars, and also the Honda horsepower, which is seemed to have been the best power plant so far during the month of August. And I'm sure a lot of people are surprised, that I'm not gonna say Joseph Newgarden, and having his best chance to win since his other teammates have already experienced Indy 500 glory, but Newgarden hasn't been able to break through yet. And like the only reason I'm not going to, say Joseph Newgarden is I'm not really sure what the Chevrolets are going to look like today. It seemed like last year, Chevrolet was the best car to be in, and this year has flipped the script. Honda, seems like if you want to win today, you want to be in a Honda, but definitely in race trend, Chevrolets are a lot closer, and it's going to be interesting to see, Team Penske's, struggled so far during the month of August. And since Carb Day, it's gonna be interesting to see if they figured their setups out. And I know in media day, Joe, you had a chance to ask Jack Harvey, driver for Meyer Shank Racing, about his approach to this race. What did he say in his interview?
So it's really interesting because Jack Harvey, he's starting in front of several Team Penske's cars as well as Fernando Alonso. So one of the questions was when you're racing, of course, you're going to be focused on your race strategy. Does it play a little bit of a mind game if you start seeing the Penske drivers pass you and start climbing up faster, or do you just stick to your race plan? One of the big things was stick to his race plan. He anticipates the Penske's will probably get around and start going forward. His goal is to also get forward, but it's not a race between him and Penske trying to get to the front. It's him sticking to his game plan and going to the front with the team. They got a good strategy in place, and they feel overall really good spot to climb up the field. Now, of course, everyone is climbing up the field because they all want to get the win. And the winner, of course, as tradition, gets a chance to drink that milk. Here is a look from Indianapolis and the milk preference from all the drivers. Most of the drivers, including like Fernando Alonso, Marco Andretti, they went with whole milk. Some of the drivers that went with different choices, Marcus Ericsson and Ben Hanley went with 2% milk, as well as Tony Kanaan, but he requested ice cold 2% milk. And then James Hinchcliffe and Ed Carpenter both requested possibly buttermilk, keeping with the tradition since the first winner of the Indianapolis 500 drank buttermilk. It was more leftover butter turned into milk from home, but ever since then, that kicked off the tradition of milk at Victory Lane. And we definitely want to hear from everyone in the chat room. If you were to win the Indianapolis 500, would you prefer whole milk, 2% milk, or fat-free milk? Definitely share it with us. And I know starting with you guys, Matt, if you were to win the Indianapolis 500, what's your milk preference? And Kobe, what's your milk?
Well, definitely not whole. It would definitely be a 2%, 2% job for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and for me, I definitely have to go with whole milk. That's the only type of milk I drink. But I'm not sure if the fans will get mad at me doing this in Victory Lane. But I prefer chocolate milk over any other type of milk.
Chocolate milk. I know definitely one of the big things. I probably go with the whole milk crowd as well too. One of the big things I remember Buddy Lazier, he said it was the best tasting milk he ever had. It felt like the freshest milk. And I feel like the whole milk will be the full experience. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the winner, what kind of milk they get. And of course, definitely it's a big marketing day for the milk company and for everyone associated in the milk industry. Now, with that said, there's going to be some drivers that are looking to repeat and taste the milk again. Matt, who are those drivers?
Well, we've got a good bunch of former winners in the field. And Helio Castroneves, of course, will be looking to take his fourth win at the Speedway. He's currently tied second on the all-time list, and he will move to joint lead if he gets the win today with AJ Foyt on 4, along with AJ Foyt, Rick Mears, and Alonso Senior. Scott Dixon, Will Power, Tony Kanaan, Alexander Rossi, Hunter Ray, Takuma Sato, and last year's obviously defending winner Simon Pagenaud are our list of former Indianapolis 500 winners in the field this afternoon. This could be Helio Castroneves' final Indy 500. We've been saying that for the last few years, but he's back and he's got a fast car underneath him. His full-time job this season with the Acura team, Penske IMSA project, will come to an end at the end of the season, and he'll be a free agent. Will Helio win his fourth today, and will that see him back in the season, in the series full-time next year, do you think, Kobe?
Well, I actually don't think that Helio Castroneves is going to get win number 4 today. I understand, he's been close to number 4. I believe a couple of times watching some Indy 500 highlights last night, like memorable finishes. And, since, I believe, it was twice, Helio come so close. And one of the years, I believe it was 2014, he was chasing Ryan Hunter-Reay. And then, I think it's also 2017. Tried to get around Takuma Sato, but he wasn't able to get there. So Helio's been knocking on the door trying to get win number 4, but past 2 years really hasn't been the best for Helio Castroneves. Remember 2018 he crashed out, and then last year he had some drama earlier in the race, and pretty much took him out of contention. So I don't see Helio winning today, especially since it seems like Chevrolet is down a little bit in comparison to Honda. And I'm not sure if Team Penske is going to get their issues figured out, but it would not surprise me if they did, because, of course, they're Team Penske. And as for, his future in the Indy 500, I'm not really sure if we'll see Helio again, but it's really crazy. He's been driving with Team Penske basically his entire career, and it would just be really strange feeling, in my opinion, to see Helio Castroneves driving for another team in the Indy 500.
Yeah, absolutely. For our generation, you think of Team Penske at the Speedway, you think of Helio Castroneves and his 2009 win, his last one here, after the whole court case thing, to come back and win the race and climb the fence and do the Spider-Man was amazingly emotional. And it would be great to see him win a fourth and go tied at the top. But I agree, I can't quite see him being in the position. Well, he'll be in position hopefully at the end, but I wouldn't put him as the top Penske car of their 4 if I had to pick one of them at the end of the race. Alexander Rossi is looking for his second win here. He got his first, of course, in the 100 running 4 years ago on fumes. That was without the aero screen. What did Alex Rossi have to say about the aero screen, Joe, on Media Day?
Well, on Media Day, Alexander Rossi, we got the opportunity to ask him the question with the aero screen, if we're going to see a change in the race and any new challenges. Alexander Rossi anticipates the same kind of race in 2018-2019 with this aero kit. A little bit more front weight on the car, of course, but the teams that are adjusting their setup to still make the car really fast. And when it comes to the heat, though, he feels with the heat, yellow flags will be a little bit more trickier. It's going to be a little bit more hotter in the cars, but definitely as they're running, he feels the same. And he even went on to say that when it came to preparing for the race, they weren't doing anything out of the ordinary, such as extra fluids, anticipating a hotter than normal Indy 500. He was just sticking to the same routine. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all the drivers handle the heat today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a little focus in on our 2013 winner, Tony Kanaan. This was supposed to be TK's last lap, and like Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR, he's having to do it without fans in the stands, which is a real shame. The farewell tour, he's running just the oval races this year. So this is, I think, 2 more after this, and that'll be the end of Tony Kanaan's IndyCar career, unfortunately. One of the most popular drivers in the history of the Speedway. He got that emotional win, which sees him next to his good mate on the trophy, Dan Weldon, back in 2013, as I mentioned. But this race running behind closed doors, as I said, will not see him race in front of the fans. He's open to future possibilities, of course, just here at Indianapolis rather than running anywhere else. What do you think, guys, will be the swayer? Because when fans are allowed to return, do you think Tony will come with them for one last time next year?
Actually, I do think that we'll see Tony Kanaan in the Indy 500 again. I don't think we'll see him in other IndyCar races, but at least the Indy 500. If the opportunity is right, if there's a good ride available and the sponsorship is there, I don't see why not. As you mentioned, Tony Kanaan has been one of the most popular drivers in the Indianapolis 500. I remember, when to watch the driver introductions when the announcer was saying it's TK Tony Kanaan, the fans just went crazy. They really love that guy, and Tony loves the fans as well. So looking at next year, if we put this global pandemic behind us and we're allowed to have fans return, I definitely, would not be surprised if we see Tony Kanaan come back one final time, not just for him, but for his fans, so they can, see him compete in the greatest spectacle in racing, one final lap.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if he comes back. I think he will come back for the Indianapolis 500. Biggest spectacle in all sports. When it comes to the rest of the season, I don't see it. But for him, the fans love him. They want to be there to cheer him on for the last night. And I do see Tony Kanaan returning back to Indy.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. As you said, Kobe, it won't be in a back of the field car. If he's going to come back, it'll be in something with a half decent ride under him. Time to make a pick then for this afternoon's Indianapolis 500. I'll go first, and I think it's going to be one of those fuel Indy 500s like we saw at the 100th running. And we know who to look at when we talk about fuel in the IndyCar series, and that's New Zealand's Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon is my pick to win this race this afternoon.
Yeah. And when I'm looking at all of the predictions and stuff, are we gonna see a new winner or a repeat winner? Yeah, I'm gonna save my pick for a little later in the program when we get to the pick a winner segment. Also, and also when we say who we think our dark horse is gonna be, this race is so difficult to win, and that's why and it's so hard to win this race more than once. So that's why today I'm gonna go with a new winner, and I'll share that later in today's program.
Here it's gonna be. I think it's going to be a repeat winner. I think it's going to be somebody out of that group. But definitely it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out of the group. And I know pick a winner. It's going to be really interesting. Scott Dixon, his fuel mileage, that's a great point. I thought you were going to go with Alexander Russ, but Scott Dixon's another great one.
He might be my dark horse.
Yeah, now checking out some other storylines coming from the Indy 500. NASCAR Man on Twitter posted a piece from an old news article from 1977, and the article said that McLaren almost entered 1976 Formula One world champion James Hunt in the 1977 Indy 500, and Hunt was quoted saying that he had a 50-50 chance that he would compete in the Indy 500, but things didn't work out, and instead he attended the 1977 Indy 500 as a spectator only. Matt and Joe, can you imagine, what could have happened if McLaren had entered James Hunt, like James Hunt, in the Indy 500?
Here's my thoughts on that story. You've got Indianapolis 500 stories and James Hunt stories. Magic.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would have been really exciting. Oh, man, I can't imagine just. We saw how James Hunt had so much character, such a good following. He would have been huge for the Indianapolis 500. I think that's sort of what we're seeing a little bit with Fernando Alonso, just a huge following from Formula One coming to cheer on Fernando Alonso and see, can he do it?
And James Hunt, he had a wild personality, and watching the movie Rush, with talking about his rivalry between him and Niki Lauda, really good movie. Encouraged people to watch that, and it definitely would have been interesting to see. Back in the day, could James Hunt have, been able to, come out of the world of Formula One and come run the oval? I understand some other F1 drivers, did come over from F1 and run the Indy 500 over the years. And certainly it would have been interesting to see how James Hunt would have fared on the oval at IMS. And also, our second story coming out from yesterday, FIA President Jean Todt was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway yesterday with Roger Penske taking a tour around the speedway. And previously, Penske said that he would be open to seeing Formula One return to Indy, along with a potential endurance race. And with the FIA president meeting Roger Penske, is this a sign that Formula One U.S. Grand Prix could return to the Brickyard with the addition of a potential FIA World Endurance Championship race as well?
Well, the big stickler point, I suppose you'd call it, is Circuit of the Americas, because they've got Formula One, they've got World Endurance Championship, and they've got MotoGP. Could we see all three of those series come back to Indianapolis, or back in two of them, and coming to Indianapolis in the World Endurance Championship? There's also been talk about getting lights at the Speedway, which I think is probably high on Roger's list to get sorted. Yes, I would. This is the first rumblings and rumours of FIA sanctioned races back at the Speedway. It would be great to see. We've got the Intercontinental GT Challenge 6 hours of Indianapolis coming up in October, which is going to be a bit of a precursor, I suppose, for endurance racing back at the Brickyard. So, yeah, it'd be good to see. I'd love to see Formula One at the greatest racetrack on the planet.
Yeah, seeing Formula One back in Indianapolis is called the racing capital of the world for a reason. They'll love to have, again, the bragging rights. We hold events for NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar, Indy 500, World Endurance Championship will be great. I mean, they even hosted MotoGP for a long time as well, too. So I think definitely Roger Penske, he wants to invest it to where Indianapolis 500 is truly the racing capital where every major series has some sort of event going on there.
And speaking of Roger Penske, he's going to be given the command of fire engines today. And, that's definitely going to be a departure of tradition, for, when it was, under the ownership of the Holman George family. Remember, for so many years during my first years of watching Indy 500, saw Mary Holman George given the command. Then it was Tony George. And now it's going to be Roger Penske. So definitely a shift in tradition there, as IndyCar moves forward into the future. And for the first time in IMS history, we'll have 3 racing generations on the track at the same time. And during the pace laps, Mario Andretti will be driving the IndyCar Honda 2-seater with his son Michael Andretti in the back as the passenger, while Marco Andretti will be on the track at the front of the field for the Indy 500. So all 3 Andrettis will be on the track at the same time. And what a special moment for one of racing's most famous families. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw the back and forward on Twitter over the last couple of days between Mario and Michael about who would be driving that 2-seater. It looks like Mario has got the nod because that's his job basically with IndyCar now, is to drive that 2-seater. So yeah, it's going to be great to see those two up the front with their son or grandson leading the field to the green flag. Indianapolis is going to be a terrific fillet in the Andretti cap. Can the curse be broken today?
That's a good big question. Can the curse be broken today? It's going to be really interesting to see that moment. I think it's going to be super exciting for the Andretti family to have that moment. And it's definitely going to be really exciting to see what's going to happen. The big thing, of course, is can the curse be broken? We talked about all 32 drivers, but the final driver we haven't talked about just yet is, of course, the pole sitter, Marco Andretti, seeking to end the Andretti curse. It's very interesting. 21 times the pole sitter has won the Indianapolis 500. That's out of 103 races. Today, of course, is the 104th running of the race. The last time we had 2 different pole winners win back-to-back years, that was Scott Dixon in 2008. The next year, Helio Castroneves in 2009. 4 times, though, we have seen this, where a different pole winner and on 2 different years consecutively have won. On Carb Day, Marco Andretti said he felt really good with the car. The car is in really great shape. So he feels really confident that he could just go out there and focus on the race at the Indianapolis 500. I know when it comes to the Andretti family, the Indianapolis 500 IndyCar, how big of a deal would it be if Marco was to win the Indy 500 today?
Oh, massive. I mean, if you saw the video, he was doing the round from pole day last weekend of the fans that had congregated outside the Speedway. As soon as Marco's time went up to the top of the board, there was cheers and applause and everything from those guys standing outside the Speedway. So what a massive deal it would be to have another Andretti name on the trophy. The curse would finally be broken. I can't see it happening, if I'm totally honest, but it would be another of those famous Indianapolis Speedway moments. And in 2020, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, and Joe, I know we discussed this yesterday quite a bit, talking about like what would be the bigger story. Would it be Marco Andretti winning today, finally ended the Andretti curse, or would it be Fernando Alonso finally, taking the Triple Crown? And with Marco Andretti, I think that would be, a huge deal for IndyCar. Him winning, ending the Andretti curse, being able to celebrate with his father Michael and his grandfather Mario, that would be really special for the entire Andretti's family and Andretti Autosport as a whole. And also I believe with Fernando Alonso completing the Triple Crown, that would just be great for motorsports in general, because the Triple Crown is definitely one of the most prestigious awards that you can possibly win, and really hard to do. That's why we've only had one person do it before, and that was Graham Hill. But going back to Marco Andretti, the pole setter, I think Marco Andretti winning would definitely be a great deal for IndyCar.
It'll be a great deal for IndyCar, great deal. I think it'll be really popular. It will definitely be top story, I think, worldwide to see return of the Andretti name at victory at lane at the Indianapolis 500. He is very confident. Yesterday, Marco, during the NASCAR race, he was taking questions on Twitter from the fans. His Honda is looking really good, and last Honda to win the Indy 500 was not too long ago. Takuma Sato in 2017, driving for Andretti Autosport. Last time we had to find a winner that was not part of Andretti Autosport, that includes Andretti Herta, or part of Penske, was 2013, when TK won the Indianapolis 500. This Marco, knowing he has essentially the best situation, a fast Honda, a team that has won the Indy 500, and he started on the pole, optimal strategy, best pit stop, stall he got, nobody in front of him, just people behind him. Can he really just go out there and focus on the race and focus on just winning?
Yeah, I certainly think that Marco Andretti right now seems to be in a great situation. The fast car, although Carb Day definitely wasn't up there on the speed charts, but his Andretti teammates were. So I don't think that his time on where he was on Carb Day, I believe it might have been 28th, I believe. Yeah, Marco, I don't think he has anything to worry about. I believe that everything is going well right now, and I believe that he can just focus on the race and be at ease.
Well, he's, as you said, Joe, he's in the prime position, pole position on the grid. He's got the best pit stall. There has been some questions about his confidence and his cars over the last few years. Let's just see how the race pans out. If he, as you mentioned, he was a little bit slow during Carb Day in terms of speed, but he seems confident, and all of the Andretti guys have said how confident they are about their cars. So if they can get up there and mix it with the Penske and Ganassi guys at the front, we should have an excellent race. I just, as I said before, unfortunately for Marco and the Andretti family, I just can't see the curse being broken this afternoon. Sorry to everybody that's wishing that to happen.
I hear you. Indianapolis 500, there's all saying that the Speedway sort of essentially chooses who wins the race, that it's their time to win the race. A lot of people are feeling this could be Andretti's time to win the race, but Indianapolis 500 is almost, I would say, unpredictable, but it just seems like there's always that thing where we've seen drivers dominate the race and not win it. That happened to Mario already. 1994, Emerson Fittipaldi just about had the entire field lap, lost it towards the end, handing the win to Alonso Jr. So many times we've seen where this race is so hard to win. 500 miles, of course, it's the only 500-mile race this year for the IndyCar Series, so it's going to be really interesting to see who has the best setup, who has the best car, and who wins the race, which leads us to our final part, pick a winner. This time a little bit different. We're going to do pick a winner, who we think is going to win, and then, of course, who do we see as a dark horse favorite? See if we could get a little caught up in the pick winner stands. Kobe right now has a big lead, 10 wins this season. Of course, that's between all the motorsports, and for everyone in the chat room, start chatting. We want to see your picks. Who's going to win? If you win, you could be on the scoreboard as well if we show on Grid Life Pre-Race. Starting with you, Kobe, when it comes to the dark horse pick, who is your dark horse pick for the Indianapolis 500?
For my dark horse pick, I'm gonna go with the rookie who's definitely looked good so far, and it's not gonna be Renus VK, but I think Alex Palou. I think if the cards fall in the in the right place for Palou, anything can happen. I remember Matt mentioned earlier in the program that that he thought it might become one of them field races, and you remember what it was like when Alexander Rossi, he won one of those field races as a rookie, and if we get one of those races, a rookie can also win today. So that's why I'm going with Alex Palou as my dark horse pick.
I think when it comes to a dark horse pick, I think I'm going to go with Santino Ferrucci. 7th last year. He's now the head of the team. They seem to be more focused on setup for the race, so I think that's going to be my dark horse pick. Matt, since you'll be going last, you get to pick your dark horse pick, and then you also get to pick who you think is going to win your regular pick a winner?
Well, I've already given away my pick a winner pick earlier on in the show, and that was Scott Dixon, and that won't change. As a dark horse, there's so many people you could pick as a dark horse. You mentioned Rossi a little while ago, Kobe. He'll be strong, as all the Andretti cars will. Felix Rosenquist will probably be a factor at some point in the race. But I think James Hinchcliffe will, he's not got a full-time ride, and he's got history at this racetrack, of course, as we mentioned earlier. I think James Hinchcliffe's got a real decent shot at winning this race. Not quite a dark horse, but he's going to be my dark horse pick for this afternoon.
Yeah, and for me, you mentioned Alex Palou is my dark horse pick, and I know Matt's gonna disagree with me for my winner, but I'm gonna make a bold prediction and say the Andretti curse is gonna come to an end. It's not the month of May, it's the month of August. So month of August, new things, and plus it's 2020, a year full of surprises. So since it's been 2020 and all crazy things happening all over the world, why not Marco Andretti win the Indianapolis 500?
Wow, Marco Andretti winning the Indy 500. That's a pretty big pick. When it comes to the Indianapolis 500, I'm going to go with somebody that I think is going to win. It's going to be a repeat winner. And I think it's going to be a repeat winner not a lot of people are anticipating, but I am. I think it's going to be Takuma Sato in the front row in his Honda. Ray Hall Letterman Racing, they got one win there. Of course, that was with Buddy Rice a while back, but they're looking really good. They got both cars starting up front. So I definitely think it's going to be really interesting to see how the race turns out with the Ray Hall Letterman Hondas, the Chevrolets. It's going to be a really fun race. We definitely thank everyone for tuning in to the special Grid Live Indianapolis 500 pre-race edition. Any final words, Kobe, before we go off the air?
Yeah, I understand. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, definitely an unprecedented, difficult year for everyone going on. I understand the Indy 500 is not going to feel the same this year, especially when we're coming to the green flag with those 11 rows of three, and you look at the grandstand and there's nobody up there, and also in the final lap, I remember when Alexander Rossi was trying to chase down Simon Pagenaud going through 3 and 4, looking at the crowd on their feet, getting excited, especially during those final laps. That's something that I'll definitely miss. But, also just feeling very grateful that the Indianapolis 500 is going to happen this year, because a few months ago, I was feeling really down, thinking that this race wasn't going to happen. This is certainly one of the most special races of the year, and one of the most prestigious ones in the world. And coming up at in just a couple of minutes at 1 p.m. Eastern time, you can watch pre-race coverage of the Indianapolis 500 on NBC.
Yeah, and then Matt, of course, he's at the Grid World Motorsport League. Follow on Twitter at grid_WML. When it comes to this race, any final words, Matt?
It's going to be a good one. As Kobe mentioned, the pictures will be coming through on NBC, and you can mute your TV and listen to me and the rest of the crew on USRN. Matt Owens, our lead anchor, he is the walking, talking encyclopedia of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So this is going to be our most prestigious call of the season, and looking forward to jumping on with those guys shortly. Quick plug for World Motorsport League. Lewis Hamilton will continue to lead this week, although there has been no F1 race. And for a third week in a row, we have a different man in second place, and a new entry goes straight into second place as well. So check out, as you said, grid_WML tomorrow, where we'll have an updated top 10 for you. Lewis Hamilton, though, will be our leader for a third week in a row.
Definitely, it's going to be really exciting to follow the Grid World Motorsport League. Definitely visit our website, gridranking.com. You'll find a link to both our Twitter accounts, all our social media presence, and we encourage everyone to definitely subscribe to us on YouTube and visit our Patreon page. Help us grow. For Kobe Lammett at the podium finish, Matt White at Grid World Motorsport League, I'm Joe Samdiego, Grid Ranking. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day and enjoy today's Indianapolis 500.